Welcome to the Matt Waller Podcast, where we look at success at the intersection of technology, logistics, supply chain, retail, and CPG, also known as the retail value chain. I want to clarify that this podcast is distinct from my responsibilities as a professor in the Sam M. Walton College of Business. Nonetheless, it aligns with my aspiration to provide practical insights to professionals and business by showcasing companies and people that can enhance your ability to manage, lead, and strategize and market effectively in the retail value chain. Before we dive into today's exciting episode, I'd like to thank our sponsor, New Road Capital Partners. New Road invests in proven technologies, services, and products that serve unmet needs in the marketplace. They look for companies in supply chain and logistics, as well as consumer-oriented companies. For more information, go to newroadcp.com. I would also like to disclose that I am a strategic advisor to New Road. I'd also like to recognize podcastvideos.com for the services they provide for these podcasts. I'm very pleased with their services. And now, without further ado, let's get into the exciting episode. I have with me today Obele Brown-West Hensley, who is the president of Tracer. Tracer is a company that is a data analytics platform that was originally incubated within VaynerMedia and then spun out as an entrepreneurial organization. So it was originally created to solve problems for a media company. And but by spinning it out, you're going to hear this story. It is actually solving bigger problems than just what an agency might be interested in. It's looking at solving problems for finance and supply chain, and obviously other areas of marketing that even an agency might not necessarily be interested in. But I think you're really going to enjoy this. If you're in marketing or advertising or consumer goods or retail, you definitely need to pay attention to this. But I would say if you're in the area of data analytics, data science, you should probably be aware of this as well. If you're an investor, I think you should pay attention to this. There's a lot of angles on this that are quite interesting. And Obele she's the president of Tracer, but she has an incredible background in advertising and marketing and leadership. And so I ask her a lot of detailed questions about Tracer, but I also ask her a little bit about her leadership and how she's developed into a leader. And I think you're really going to enjoy this. Thank you so much, Obele, for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Tracer is such an interesting company because I know that, today there's so much fragmentation, in the marketing channels and it's like the definitions of performance metrics seem to be changing, and you've got data coming from a lot of different sources. But I'm just curious, as president of Tracer, what is your vision for how the company can help brands take control of their data and gain independence from partners?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I'm coming up on my 1 year of being the president, and I was attracted to Tracer because in my past advertising agency life, it was a problem that I saw every brand had, especially as the digital marketing landscape continued to fragment, get larger, new entry points. When I started, there was no such thing as social media. And now every couple of days, there's a new platform. It becomes increasingly hard to actually wrangle your data. There's just so much of it. And so the promise of Tracer to the end business user is to actually make sense of the data so you can actually do what you need to do to understand your business and continue to grow and scale your business from there. It's incredibly hard to do that day by day as the landscapes, especially when you're looking at advertising data, but even when you're looking at the new entry points of AI into all the different types of all the different types of, actually, I'm going to take a step back. Let's pause for a moment and I'll start. But it's incredibly challenging for people to just get their arms around the data. And so as far as having control, it's control of your data so you're able to actually make informed business decisions. And so that's what's exciting to me as I think about the future of Tracer. It's just actually simplifying what will continue to be an incredibly fragmented landscape as the world continues to evolve.
It's so interesting. I know, and I think the listeners don't know, so I'll say this, that Tracer was incubated within VaynerMedia. And
yes,
keep in mind, Obele, I am not a marketing person. I'm more of a supply chain person. So but I've learned a little bit about marketing over time, but I don't know that much. But I was aware of Gary Vaynerchuk because someone recommended, well, let me back up a second. I know very little about social media. And someone recommended maybe 6 or 7 or 8 years ago to read a book that Gary Vaynerchuk had written. And I read it. And I read it and like, I don't know what to do with this. It was right. I'm like,
I'm sure you were entertained, though.
I was very entertained. And so I looked him up, after reading the book. It was a quick read, and I looked him up, and the guy really understands this stuff. So I can see having Tracer being incubated within VaynerMedia as being pretty powerful.
Yeah, and VaynerMedia is still actually one of our clients. We are completely separated now, but Gary is an investor. His entire enterprise, VaynerX, is a client of Tracer. But yeah, it's a powerful tool. Our founder, who are one of our co-founders, who I believe has been on your podcast as well, Jeffrey Nicholson. He actually was the chief media officer at VaynerMedia and started incubating Tracer during his time there. And he credits the growth of the media operation at Vayner to the fact that Tracer was there and was able to actually provide all of the Vayner clients with unprecedented reporting of their of all of the levers that Vayner had been pulling for them. They worked with a number of different agencies in the past, and Vayner was the first that was able to, with speed, get them answers to very complex questions of what was happening with their media and how it was impacting their bottom line. And that was all a credit to Tracer. And so when it came time to splinter out of VaynerMedia, it was because we had clients at VaynerMedia that wanted to use us outside of just what VaynerMedia reporting was doing for them. And so that's when Jeff and Leighton, our co-founders, they ended up leaving Vayner to do Tracer full-time in 2021. And the rest is kind of history as we continue to grow. But yes, very powerful tool for VaynerMedia, continues to still be a powerful tool for VaynerMedia.
That's really exciting. It's neat to see these kinds of advanced technologies rolled out of companies and allowed to flourish. Because a lot of times, if they stay in the company, they'll stay kind of isolated, to the needs of the firm as opposed to the needs of the broader potential audience.
Yeah, and I think the potential. I think Gary saw the potential in still being an investor, but having Tracer be beyond the walls of Vayner, because there is so much more that can be offered with it, without having the confines of just sitting within one ecosystem. So at the time when it was within the VaynerMedia ecosystem, it was really just focused on media and marketing. Now, today, we have clients where we're ingesting data that has nothing to do with media and marketing, but they still have a data organization problem. They need a tool that can help them organize it and get to quick solutions. And that's why they work with us. And that wouldn't necessarily have been able to be something that could happen if it was still just within the VaynerMedia umbrella. So very thankful for Gary's continued partnership, but also allowing us to continue to flourish outside of the VaynerMedia ecosystem.
Well, I've come across a lot of data intelligence platforms over the past few years, and it's really hard to get customers. And but I know you all have over 100 partners in large enterprises that you're working with. And I'm just curious, how does Tracer organize and contextualize data from such a wide range of sources to provide meaningful insights?
Yeah. So we work with a number of partners that help us. We like to say that we're an aggregator of aggregators, right? Where when we are trying to help our clients solve problems, we recognize that not every data set lives in just one place. And so in order for us to be able to ingest from anywhere, we partner with a number of different places that are able to allow us to bring in their data and to the Tracer ecosystem. As far as like our breadth of clients, everyone has data problems. Everyone's trying to solve answers. It's not agnostic to one. It's not agnostic to one vertical. It's not agnostic to one type of business. It is truly something that if you are a business that has data, which every business will have some form of data, and it becomes messy and unwielding, that's where we shine. So we're able to shine in retail, we're able to shine in pharma, we're able to shine in finance, because all of these people, regardless of the company, they're all trying to get to answers quicker so they can actually go about the business of building their business. And so our platform enables all businesses to do that. We're excited that we're not so vertical specific or industry specific. Our tool is flexible enough where regardless of where your data is, we have enough partnerships. Our technology is flexible enough to be able to ingest it and make sense of it for you.
And that's one of the benefits of being spun out of VaynerMedia.
Absolutely.
Because otherwise you would have certainly stayed not only within marketing, but within the area of marketing that VaynerMedia focuses on.
Correct.
And so that it was really smart to do that. It's funny you mentioned this because just recently I was talking with some people in supply chain on a supply chain topic, which is more my area. And we were talking about how really the information that people need in supply chain these days to make good decisions is so broad. It's not just supply chain. They actually need a lot of marketing information. And a lot of times they don't get it. For example, take retail media networks.
Yeah.
There's so much information out there. It's kind of confusing a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just at Shop Talk last week, and for those listening that don't know Shop Talk, it's one of the premier conferences where a lot of anyone in retail, e-commerce or brick and mortar is there. Everyone comes to Vegas. They also have one in Europe, but I was at the one in Vegas last week, having a lot of different meetings. And one of the dashboards that I loved to share with the meetings that I was holding at Shop Talk was a dashboard that we have for a client that was actually pretty supply chain specific, but was tying in all of their media data, because what they were hoping to understand was how a campaign that was in market at any given time was impacting their overall sales and what the products were that they were selling. And the reason for that is because they needed to be able to forecast how much more of that product they needed to be able to buy at a given time, because the lead time in order to get that product took a little bit. And so being able to really understand how their advertising and their marketing campaigns were actually impacting sales was something that the CEO and CMO absolutely needed to know at a moment's notice, so they could actually then plan for what their sales cycle is going to look like in ordering inventory. So there, to your point, there's a lot that comes from having this data together that classic forms prior to technologies like Tracer, it was incredibly hard to actually get that in real time. But in a moment's notice, they could log into Tracer and they could actually understand how that commercial or that radio commercial that they put out was actually impacting the need to potentially order ahead in some of their product inventory.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how with some of these opportunities around retail media, you can implement something and get results pretty quickly and see, what's this doing? But this is off the subject a little bit, but I can't help but
yeah. I love off-subject questions.
You were in Las Vegas, and I haven't been there for a while. Did you see?
I hadn't been there in a long time either. Probably 12 or 13 years since I had been there, so it hadn't changed.
Did you see the Sphere?
I did see the Sphere. I forgot what it was until we were landing, and I saw a giant eyeball looking at the plane, and I didn't know what it was, and then I remembered about the Sphere. So yes, I did see it. I did not go, but I did see it.
Oh, that's great. Okay. What are some examples you've seen, of Tracer helping brands achieve significant results through a more focused testing and optimization approach that the platform enables?
Yeah. I think one of the ones that I love to talk about, it's no secret, you can see their case study on our website, Papa John's. Prior to Tracer, more marketing focused, the work that we're doing with them, but they have national agencies and national advertising campaigns that they put out, but it's Papa John's. They also have a lot of brick and mortar, right? They have locations all over the country. And those locations and those franchisees have their own partnerships with agencies locally, marketing shops locally, media shops locally, that are doing their own community-based local advertising efforts. Prior to Tracer, they were not able to actually see the full impact of what was happening locally and how that leveled up to the national level and vice versa, what nationally was happening and would feed into the local shops. Tracer enabled that for them, and we're very proud of that, where they, instead of relying on the data from one store to another store, trying to match that nationally into like an Excel file and try to make sense of it, and it would take a lot of time. It was a lot of man hours to get that work done. They're now able, within a moment's notice, to see within the Tracer platform how all of those things are interacting together and really own the data instead of relying on the stores, the franchisees, the agency, the various agencies, trying to map it and match it all together. Tracer actually joins everything together for them, so they're able to understand the full picture of how the impacts of their marketing are happening locally as well as nationally combined. So definitely something that we're very proud of. They were too, which is why they have given us a great case study to talk about, but really giving them ownership of their data, where they have now actually transitioned some of the agencies that were in their mix prior to working with Tracer. And they even said kudos to us because it was an easy switch for them to make these transitions because they owned everything. The data was already within one centralized place. They didn't lose anything. They didn't skip a beat from a business perspective with our enablement. So very proud of that also.
Of course, Tracer works with global brands across industries to process their data. What's an example of a successful partnership where Tracer's helped a major brand change how they leverage their data?
Yeah. So Sanofi Pharmaceutical, one of our largest clients, we started working with them in the North America region. Then we started working with them globally. And then we added on their Gen Meds division as well. And the interesting tidbit, I think a lot of people work with Sanofi. We were actually talking with a a technology company partner of ours yesterday, and they were talking about some of their work with Sanofi. And they did not realize that Tracer worked with them, and that the platform that Sanofi uses globally is called Temple. The technology partner was saying to us, oh, well, yeah, how does Tracer work with Sanofi? We see that you work with Sanofi on your website, but how do you work with them? Because they have their own internal tool called Temple. And I said to them, I was like, well, Temple's Tracer. You're actually working with Tracer, and you didn't realize that. So we're so ingrained in the business of Sanofi that their entire ecosystem for reporting is mapped into their tool called Temple, and Temple is Tracer. So as far as like changing the culture and the ecosystem of a business, like we've actually built for them the way that they report globally and within their different divisions. And we have meetings with them. We're actually in their internal meetings talking about how we can help them do even more with the data on a fairly frequent basis. So when you talk about like changing a brand for the better, I think Temple is a great case study of that, where even external partners that Sanofi works with, they know what Temple is, but they had no idea that Temple was enabled by Tracer.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
So, Obele, as president of Tracer, what excites you about Tracer's ability to empower brands?
I think what excites me is that it's a real problem. It's a real problem that everyone has to wrangle data. It takes an insanely long time. And when you're doing it I call it the old-fashioned way because Tracer exists, but it's actually the most common way of how people do it is by a lot of humans trying to stitch together complex data in an Excel document. By the time you actually do that, there's only so many hours in the day. There's only so many hands that you can leverage to answer that. By the time you do that, the data's old. And it's a real problem that people have to really get their hands on actionable data that you can proactively make decisions on. So what excites me is that we're actually giving people the opportunity to actually look at their business the right way instead of retroactively trying to solve a problem because it took you a long time to get your data into a usable place where you can make sense of it. We're actually giving it to you in real time so you can be a little bit more proactive than you've ever been and really starting to solve problems quickly and understand your business in a more dynamic way. So that's what excites me the most is that we are actually solving a real need in the business community. And that's why I made the leap and came over. It's a really fascinating product that has been built, and I'm excited to get it in more hands.
Boy, it sounds valuable. I know there's been, throughout my career, especially earlier in my career, I remember trying to do analyses where I had to mix data that was daily with data that was weekly, with data that was monthly, that was with data that was weekly but defined on different weeks, like Monday through Sunday versus Wednesday through Tuesday. There's things like this. And then the data cleansing part is a nightmare as well.
And the normalization of the data. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, just getting to the point where you can use data is a huge part of the problem. And so I can see why customers are so excited about this ability to have a platform to enable their data intelligence. Because it used to be, especially when I was more involved in it, we spent more time cleansing and harmonizing data than we did anything else with the data.
Right. And by the time you cleanse and normalize it takes 6 months and it's old data and you're making decisions on old data that might not actually be the reality of what your business is doing today. And so, and when you're talking about normalization, I think on the global level, especially with brands like Sanofi, right, where they're working across different DMAs, they're working across different currencies, different time zones. So to actually try to get all of that data normalized and harmonized, it takes a really, really long time. So I think that's why our clients love us. And that's why I'm excited to get Tracer out there a little bit more, because it is truly solving a problem it's crazy to think about the fact that there hasn't been anything like this that has come along previously to make it easier to get your arms wrapped around data. But we have a great product that our clients love, and I'm excited to get more people to love it and know about it too.
Well, and one thing that we didn't even talk about with respect to that is that, and again, I know this from experience, that, when you've got a lot of people normalizing and harmonizing and doing all this with the data, some of them are making mistakes in their spreadsheets and how they're doing it.
Yes.
Right?
Human error is a big deal.
I mean, I've seen so many spreadsheets with errors over the years. And not only that, but also assumptions. You don't even know what their assumptions are. So having one platform that does that for you can eliminate so many errors, I would think, and frustration, really.
Absolutely. And we also have anomaly detection built in too, right? So even if there is an error downstream from some of the data that we're ingesting, we're going to flag that we're seeing something that doesn't make sense, because there's still like a component of potential human data that's coming into the system, right? And so we're able to also flag those things, because humans are humans. Like, there's always going to be the mistake that's made, and we want to catch that also, so it doesn't completely mess up the data coming into our system.
So, Obele, you have a lot of experience with agencies and professional services firms in the marketing space. So you've experienced some of the challenges Tracer addresses personally. But I was wondering, could you give us a quick background? What led you to this point of leadership at Tracer?
Oh my goodness. Well, if you had talked to me about 25 years ago, I thought I was going to be in the Peace Corps. So this is clearly not that. But no, like, as you said, I've been in the advertising marketing space for a long time at this point, and the data question has always been the biggest thorn in my side. It's the biggest thorn in, I think, any marketer side, where as you try to innovate, you have to understand the data and look at what the data is telling you. And especially when you're on the professional services side of things with clients, really being able to tell them that if they're going to invest $1 with you, what does that get them? And so as the landscape just got completely more diverse and complex with, 4 years ago, there was no TikTok, right? And now there's TikTok and everyone's talking about it. So as these new entrants have been coming in over the past 20 plus years, the data question continued to be a thorn, especially when you have clients. And so what led me to Tracer was that I was looking to be able to solve more of these answers quickly for clients I was working with. I've known Jeffrey for 20 years at this point. I did not know what he had been secretly working on within the walls of VaynerMedia, but as a friend, I was just talking to him about some of the things that I was trying to navigate in my last role as overseeing a team of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people, and a lot of different service lines and levers that we were pulling for our different clients. And I was trying to find like a more agile way to be able to answer very simple questions. And he said, well, have you not been paying attention to what I've been building? That's what Tracer is. And so I started to just get more up to speed with Tracer. He mentioned to me that he was in progress of raising his Series A, and that one of the big to-dos prior to Series A signing was to have a president. I started giving him names of people that I thought would be up for the task. And he said, no, I'm talking to you about this because it's going to be you. I loved what I was doing previously, but when I actually sat and talked to him about the fact that this has been something that I've been trying to solve for years, and I've never seen a solution like Tracer. How do you pass up the opportunity to kind of get in on the ground floor and really grow the business into what I know it can definitely be as like a game-changing tool in the quest of just data normalization and data wrangling for businesses. I knew my clients on the agency side were looking for something like this. I know agencies are looking for something like this. And then the use cases, as I've already said, expand well beyond the marketing realm. And so when he asked me, I think for the third time, and I really sat and thought about it, it's like, how do you actually turn it down? And so that's how I ended up here. As far as leadership, I've been fortunate to be someone that's been in leadership for a while in my career. And I don't know how I got to being a leader, if I'm being honest. I think it's a lot of what I say to people that I mentor now is that I think one of the core competencies when you first become a leader is that you're really good at your job and that you try really hard to always be good at your job from like an individual contributor perspective. Like you go from being an expert. But then leaders, I think it's just the confidence of knowing that the student can become the teacher. And I think that's really how most leadership roles start to grow for individuals is you can be scared of the challenge of becoming a leader, but I think at a certain point you realize that like you've been doing it for a while, that you can actually become a teacher and that there's something that you can help people that want to get into leadership roles. There's something that you can offer to them to help grow them from an individual contributor to a leader. And just having the confidence to know that you can do that. I think that is what's led me to this point in my career is just being confident that I know enough of what I'm doing to not only offer something at the individual contributor level, but also the coach mentor, getting other people to be really good at that, as well as to become future leaders themselves.
Well, I know you're in the Chicago area, and Chicago has a lot of marketing companies. Yes. For a long, and a lot of consumer goods companies as well. Do you wind up? Is there very much activity there in terms of companies coming together to share with one another and learn from one another in that area?
There is. I would say that Chicago is such a great city because to your point, there's a number of professional services firms here, lots of brands here, lots of consultancies here. Everyone actually loves to support and work with each other. I think it's a very organic environment where people love to work hard, but they also love to support their colleagues, their acquaintances, and making sure that they're matchmaking as well. So yes, there are a lot of different organizations, but also just organic groups that come together to actually network and build community, working together, and also mentorship groups as well. So yes, I'm fortunate to be in Chicago and be a part of a number of these different organic as well as more professionalized groups that do that.
And one thing I forgot to ask, where does the name Tracer come from? How can we trace the name of Tracer?
You know what's so funny is I was in a meeting with Jeff and Leighton, the two co-founders, earlier this week, and that was the first time that I had actually heard that the name came from Leighton's grandfather, I believe. I had never actually even questioned where the name came from until they said it in passing earlier this week. So I don't know the full story, but I just learned a few days ago that it actually came from, I believe it was either Leighton's grandfather or great grandfather. I will have to follow up after this, but yeah, in my mind, it always came from just like tracing where your data is coming from. I don't know, I just made it up. But yeah, it was said in passing when I was talking to them that it came from Leighton's family. So I'll have to go back and double check that.
I know. I mean, Tracer is an example of entrepreneurship at VaynerMedia, and then entrepreneurship on its own. Do you still have that spirit of entrepreneurship within the company?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I've worked at small companies. I've worked at large companies. This is by far the most entrepreneurial organization that I have worked in. We have our values, and one of the values is that a great idea can come from anywhere, and the entire team knows that. So I think that at its core just shows that the entire team is encouraged to be as entrepreneurial as possible, and people take pride and ownership in Tracer because they feel as if we're all a part of the same whole. Like, there is no hierarchy. Everyone has a voice. Everyone, like I said, if there's an idea, they feel very free to come to me, to come to Jeff, to come to Leighton, to come to anyone, to put it on the Slack channel of an idea that they might have. Like, there is no red tape. By far, this company is by far the most entrepreneurial that I've ever worked for or worked with. And yeah, it's a true team environment, which I love.
I got that sense not only from you previously, but even from the previous podcast with Jeffrey. It's very encouraging to see, and I can see why it's needed. I mean, when you look at, to your point, how many new sources of data there are and how the data is changing, I would think it would require an entrepreneurial atmosphere to keep evolving.
To keep pace with it. Exactly. Like, it's hard to be over-processed when you're working in a technology company that is about bobbing and weaving as technology changes, right? And enabling data regardless of what tech change might happen. I don't know that you can have a ton of process when everything is about being as fluid as possible and as flexible as possible.
Well, I think about, retail media networks, and, I know they've been around for a while, but not like they are now, because suppliers with some retailers, they're able to advertise in the stores on the check stand, like especially self-check stand. They can advertise in the audio in the store, on screens in the store, on the retailer's app, the retailer's website, even the retailer's inventory of advertisements for, Instagram and Facebook and things like that. All of that is, I know that technically it's been around a while, but now companies are getting that data and seeing what's happening. So my question is, have you seen retail media networks be a driver of adaptation and entrepreneurship for Tracer?
Yeah, I think it's a component for sure, because retail media networks, that's one of the fastest growing levers for retailers to pull in today's day and age. So definitely a huge driver of it. I think AI is another big driver. I hate to talk about AI because everyone's talking about AI, but I think just people preparing to actually have AI enablement, you can't do that unless you have organized data. So I think that's another big driver of our growth. But I think on top of that, I also feel like it's the people are now at a point where when you have socioeconomic challenges like we've been having over the past few years, people are trying to get to a better understanding of their investment into anything, and really be more data driven as opposed to like thumb in the wind trying to see where things are blowing. They're really trying to understand. They know that they now have all this data at their fingertips. How can they actually make more informed decisions? I think that's probably the biggest driver, if I'm being honest, is just the post-pandemic era of people having a little bit more of a tighter grip on their dollars and needing to make sure that they're making sense of their investment. You have to be able to really understand what's going on with your data in order to be able to forecast appropriately and know that the investments you're making are leading to something. So definitely retail media because it's growing, but I think it's just more of the macroeconomic environment that we're in that is the biggest driver of people really wanting to get their arms around their data. And then, of course, AI, because everyone loves AI. So.
Yeah. Well, that's true. And I could see, if you're a big brand, let's say a big consumer brand, it's easier to not only go direct to consumer, but it's also easier for smaller players in consumer goods to go through the marketplace. Like, Amazon's had the marketplace.
Amazon,
But Walmart also has marketplace, and it's growing like dynamite right now. So these big CPG companies, these big brands, they're feeling the effect of this from a market share perspective, from a cost perspective, and then back to retail media networks. I mean, there's more ways to spend money on retail media networks than there was 5 years ago.
Oh, absolutely. There's more networks than there were, so absolutely.
So there's so many decisions to be made about how to allocate dollars, and you've got to know what's being effective. I would think that this could be a competitive advantage in the sense that if you take two firms, other things being equal, one firm has lots of information and clean data that's harmonized, that's normalized, that can be used for analysis to assess where their dollars are being utilized best versus one that doesn't have that. And they're, to your point, thumb in the air trying to guess where the wind's blowing.
Right.
In the long run, you would expect these firms, the first firm, to win in the marketplace, even regardless of their great brand or whatever. Are you seeing that?
Yeah, I think as brands continue to demand more understanding of their data, 100% seeing that. Seeing that from the agency landscape for sure. If you can't answer the simple question for them, you're probably not going to be their agency for that much longer. And just in the general partnership space as well, like people want to make sure that you're able to, if you are being trusted to if they're trusting you to get a result for them, they want to understand that you're getting the result. And if they're paying you for a service, they want to make sure that you're going to provide that to them. So the place that's going to be able to do that quickly, that's going to have the answers at their fingertips, is going to very much start to outperform and it's already started to happen. Will continue to outperform the competitors who aren't able to answer those questions as quickly because the data is all over the place. They're not able to answer simplistic questions of how the dollar that they gave you to invest led to a result for them.
And I would think too that the firms that have the good data and lots of it and the ability to use it, that the managers, leaders, everyone in the company who's engaged in decision making would learn, because one key factor for learning is a short feedback loop. And it's like we were talking about earlier, Obele. The old approach, you may spend 6 months cleansing and harmonizing and normalizing the data, and you can't really learn that. But
Right.
If you can take an action and then see a result more quickly, it's like you're experimenting throughout time. You can learn, essentially.
Correct. Yeah, the testing and learning notion, right? Where I would say I would equate what used to happen was there was a lot of test because it would take so long to actually get all the data wrangled and everything together. There wasn't a ton of time to learn because by the time you were trying to learn, you were just trying to get the data together for the next test. So yes, like making sure it's the difference between spending all of your time just trying to organize the data to now spending your time analyzing and actioning on the data. That's where we want to actually help people to get to, because a lot of time is way too much time is being spent to just get to the answer. And as I've said before, once you get to the answer, it's probably old. And so you want to make sure that you're actually getting to the answer quicker so you can actually understand what does that answer mean for what you need to do next, and really starting to spend your time on strategy, spend your time on the actual work instead of just spending your time trying to get everything together.
Obele, this has been terrific. I have really enjoyed learning about Tracer and the data analytics platform that you provide, and really just the story about how it was incubated within VaynerMedia and then spun out, and now it's not only useful to an advertising agency, but also even in areas like finance and supply chain. Pretty amazing. But thank you so much for taking time to join me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you again so much for having me. I've really, really enjoyed this, and maybe I'll come back as we continue to grow and we can talk more.
I hope so. If you're finding value in this podcast, we greatly appreciate your support by subscribing to our YouTube channel. Additionally, following us on Apple and Spotify and leaving up to a 5-star review would be immensely helpful. We welcome any feedback or questions related to the podcast, as well as suggestions for further topics and guests. You can leave your comments on our YouTube channel, and rest assured that I will read each and every one of them. Please also take a moment to check out our podcast sponsors, as they play a critical role in keeping this podcast running. For more information on specific topics, timestamps, or links to articles mentioned during the podcast, head over to mattwallerpodcast.com.